that for the subset of the web standards we support, that basically it should be standard compliance and look as the user expects it or the developer expects it. Yeah, so let's start with talking about what Servo Shell is. So Servo is basically like a library, but to make testing easier, basically what's needed is like a minimal browser app that wraps the library. And for that, we have something called Servo Shell. It uses the Rust library winit on Linux, Windows, and Mac OS, where you get basically something that looks like this. So you have like something that looks pretty much like a browser. You have a URL bar, you have tabs, you have a reload button, back and forth button. So it should look quite familiar. And yeah, so on OpenHarmony, we don't have quite that. We basically re-implemented, or I basically re-implemented the UI with the ArcUI. And just to keep it simple, it currently has like a URL bar, a back button, and a forward button, and that's it for the ArcUI part. Yeah, but of course, if people want to try out Servo, contributions are welcome. The UI can definitely be improved, and other common things like reload buttons, a history, etc., would definitely be welcome additions. The main goal for us for this ArcUI version of Servo Shell is basically because it allows easy testing of Servo. You just fire up the browser app and you can test websites very easily. But it's actually not our real goal. The real goal is to have something like a Servo web view, which you can embed into applications, for example, to use some mini app which uses a web view backend, and then basically you have, the goal would be to have an API compatible web view implementation where you can just swap out the real web view against our Servo web view and render the app with Servo. And hopefully the goal would be there that it works and is faster than the reference implementation that uses Chromium. But we're still not quite there yet. So for now, what we have is basically like a browser implementation, which is used for testing. Now, before I go back to Servo, I first want to give a short introduction on OpenHarmony and how to build apps. So like the common way is basically you use the official IDE, which is Huawei DevEco Studio, and supports both apps for OpenHarmony, which is whenever I say OpenHarmony, I always mean like the open source version of OpenHarmony. And it also supports HarmonyOS Next, which is basically the OpenHarmony distribution specifically for Huawei devices. And if you use the IDE, here's a picture I took from the Huawei website. It basically allows you to just one-click build, sign, and run your applications on the device, which is very convenient for developers. There's a slight catch for all the people who are not based in China. The latest version for OpenHarmony 5 is currently not released for users or developers outside of China. So it's currently, but hopefully once the HarmonyOS Next has launched, this restriction will be lifted, and also all the developers outside of China who are interested in supporting OpenHarmony and HarmonyOS Next 5 will have support to the IDE, access to the IDE. So the standard UI for OpenHarmony apps is basically ArcUI, which is written in ArcTS. There are, of course, also a lot of other options. I believe there are some talks here, have been some talks about Flutter and React Native. But like the standard UI is basically ArcUI. And that's written in ArcTS, which I'm not going to go into details here.